Next, from the state capitol, Republican legislators addressed the press on allegations against Governor Quinn over the misallocation of funds for his now defunct violence-preventing Neighborhood Recovery Initiative program. This runs about 10 minutes.
Good afternoon, I'm Jason Barrickman, State Senator, 53rd District, and co-chairman of the Legislative Audit Commission. I'm certainly pleased with the progress that was made today, the adoption of our motion, which really is just step one that allows us to move forward with our statutory obligation to fact find. And I think it's important to remind everyone, some of you were in the hearing, but it's important to remind everyone, this absolutely is not a partisan issue. And that has been demonstrated wholeheartedly just now by the overwhelming support that was given to this effort by members of both parties and of both chambers. That said, I do take pause in the fact that to move forward, we will require the cooperation of both chambers and both parties. And there is certainly some in this building who have expressed hesitation, and I hope that they will further our efforts to use all tools available for us to perform our statutory obligation. Bottom line is we've got to get to the bottom of this. We have tens of millions of dollars that have been spent, taxpayer dollars, on what is nothing more than a political slush fund of Governor Quinn. And I think it's particularly important in light of the governor's recent claims that are not substantiated by facts. And the governor made his rounds over the weekend and is trying, in essence, to rewrite the facts of what happened and when they occurred. The governor stated that he was the first to spot these problems when, in fact, members of both the House and the Senate identified these problems long before the governor ever took action, members of both parties. The governor claims that he got to the bottom of this and he shut down the agency. Yet today, we continue to see that the NRI program continues and appears to continue to receive taxpayer dollars. Lastly, the governor claims that no NRI funds were distributed till well after the November 2010 elections, when in fact he made promises. Contracts were signed before the election. Contracts were signed as early as October 16th, 2010, and initial payments occurred only 3 days after the election. We've already obtained minutes from the IVPA meeting of September 30th, 2010 that reference Malcolm Weems, the governor's office, saying, quote, Malcolm explained that the governor's office is committed to allocating some of the funds for this initiative immediately and will allocate the rest after the election. We need to act now with all of the tools that are available to us by statute, and that's what today's about. I hope that we will continue to receive the bipartisan support of members of both chambers and that we're able to fulfill our statutory obligation and ultimately the obligation that we all have to the taxpayers of this state.
Thank you, Senator. Representative David Rice from the 109th District. And I want to thank Senator Barrickman for his leadership on taking this to the next step, and also to reemphasize the bipartisan effort that this has been. Since the day I introduced the resolution 2 years ago, asking for the initial audit, to the bipartisanship vote we had a few weeks ago on continuing the audit into the Illinois Criminal Justice Information Authority, to today's actions. It's truly bipartisan and bicameral, and we'll also want to remind everybody that any subpoena that would be discussed would take bipartisan effort and bicameral support to go forward, to preserve the integrity of the Audit Commission. So I think today gives us another tool to get to the bottom of everything that's happened over the last 3 years.
Any questions?
Sure.
If you are to want to issue a subpoena, how do you do that, and what are your next steps?
So the next step is certainly to come up with the list of documents or witnesses for whom we require information from, and to present that to what in essence is the subcommittee, who is composed of, again, members of each chamber and members of each party, and that group will determine whether or not to move forward with those requests.
And that's a subcommittee on the.
That's right.
And how big is that?
4 members.
And 2 and 2?
Correct. 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats, 2 from the House, 2 from the Senate.
So Governor Quinn said this morning that according to comptroller records, NRI payments didn't begin going out until November 18th. Have you checked these records against them?
Well, again, the Auditor General's audit shows that promises were made, contracts, which are a state obligation to pay, were begun on October 16th, 2010. Initial payments occurring 3 days after the election. I think this is a complete contrast to what the governor alleged over the weekend.
Do you intend to go straight to the subpoena power, or are you going to, as was discussed earlier, just ask people first and then see if they need to be compelled?
Today's action was meant to give us every tool available so we can make that decision as we proceed. And this is, simply step 1 that authorizes us to have all those tools that are necessary over the summer. We're not scheduled to meet until late August or September of 2014 again. So this gives us all of the tools necessary to continue with our duties over the summer.
Is there a time frame for this? I know there was some mention of that it maybe can apply to other audits or other agencies. Is this an open-ended power? Or?
No, this is a power that is specifically provided to the commission in reference to this audit.
Do you think this will have an impact on the election?
I think the roll call vote suggests that this issue is important to Republicans and Democrats everywhere around this state, and that we need to be public stewards of taxpayer dollars. That's an issue that's important to, I think, everyone in this building, as evidenced by this vote.
Senator, let's say I'm from down south and I hear about this NRI investigation in the city of Chicago. How does that sort of thing apply to places outside of the city of Chicago?
Well, I think people everywhere in the state, whether you live in Bloomington, where I come from, the city of Chicago, the suburbs, or southern Illinois, has concerns today about the wasteful spending that is occurring in our state. Think of the context of today's discussions. There are people in this building advocating for a massive tax increase in the coming hours or days. And in the context of that, what we need to do as legislators of both the House and the Senate is make sure that we are prudently spending every taxpayer dollar that goes out the door.
By saying in your opening statement here that, well, we know it's a slush fund and what the governor said is wrong, aren't you reaching the conclusion before any of this investigation takes place, and doesn't that taint the investigation?
No, I think that our duty is to obtain the facts. And the appearance of this one, I think, stinks. But rather than draw the conclusion, that's some conclusions are criminal, some are we need to change statutes. Before we get to our conclusions, I think we have to obtain all the facts that are available and then make our conclusion then.
What are you expecting to have to use this subpoena power for? I mean, obviously you wouldn't ask for it if you didn't think you could just get all the information by asking nicely. Why do you think you need the subpoena power?
Well, I think we had a lengthy discussion in the committee, and at the end of the day, we are unable to compel agencies that no longer exist or directors or other state employees who a state to appear before us without this tool. And so while there was extensive discussion about certain state employees or a certain state employee, I think there are many others who were involved in the decision-making of this program that need to provide us their information.
Do you think you'll ask for emails? Emails have been a big piece of evidence in other states in recent months. Is that something you might ask?
I think at this time, we're not going to limit in any way what we might ask for.
Where are your Democratic partners in this matter, just out of curiosity?
Again, I think the roll call vote on the motions was telling. And what we saw is an overwhelming majority from both chambers and both parties support this.
Do you plan to reach out to law enforcement like other investigative committees have done in the past, just to make sure that you're not stepping on their toes?
We when this audit first came to us, we saw the facts that suggested there may be criminal wrongdoing, and we referred that to those in law enforcement. Today we know that there are some in law enforcement who are pursuing potential crimes. That's not our charge. And so I think here we're simply trying to fulfill our duty as defined by statute.
So no intention to run your subpoenas by any law enforcement folks before you
Again, I don't think we're going to make any conclusions today about what we're going to do. We simply want to make sure we had all the tools available as we proceed in our analysis of the audit.
When you want to have a nonpartisan investigation, did you invite any of the Democrats to join you here today? And if so, why are there no Democrats here?
I certainly let them know that we would be having a press conference, but my focus with them was explaining the substance of the motion and making sure they were comfortable with it. I think they have made several comments in the hearing in regards to their support of it, and ultimately their vote is indicative of their feelings.
Sometimes law enforcement agencies ask others to back off investigations so as not to overlap or get in the way. Has there been any such communication, or do you have any fear of any such overlap?
I've received no communications from law enforcement on this. All right. Thank you.
The Illinois Channel's coverage of the state legislature is underwritten by the Illinois Trial Lawyers Association.